This is Main Street with Gary Allen. Now, here's Gary.
And hello, everybody, and welcome to Main Street. It's good to see you again, and I hope everything is going well for you as it is for me. It's been a little while. We've been off for a couple of weeks, taking some time off for some engineering stuff in the studio, but now we're back. We've got a great show for you today. And first off, I just want to thank the Japanese Garden for their continued support of this particular program. They had a great festival over the weekend. I talked to Rick Del Vecchio earlier today, and he said everything was a tremendous success. So thank you, all of you out there for that. I also want to remind you on Tuesday nights at 8 p.m., we are on dbtv.tv, which is also connected with Roku, Amazon Fire, smart TVs, seen all around the world. I mean, this is a new new program for us to be on, a new network. They reach something like 150,000 households per hour, per day, just in the United States. So I'm excited about that. Also, go to YouTube. Whatever guest you want to watch, some of the past shows, like today with Ray, come on there. You put Ray Abruzzo on Main Street with Gary Allen, and you'll be able to watch the show in a couple of days. It's no problem. But just go to youtube.com, and whatever guest you want, just put his or her name in there on Main Street, and you'll be able to watch that show. We're going to start showing that. Maybe Tommy will put it up today. I'm not really sure very much. Also want to thank Tommy Sitt, who is my executive producer for this particular program, along with Rick Del Vecchio for their continued support and working with us. My guest today is a gentleman that I've known for a number of years. We both got our start thanks to Stephen Boschko way back in the day in L.A. His name is Ray Abruzzo. You know him from The Sopranos, where he played Little Carmine, Chicago PD, L.A. Law, Hot in Cleveland, Night Court, Boston Legal, NYPD Blue, Dynasty, and many, many, many other, like Falcon Crest. You know him from there. Ray has a great passion for horses. We're going to talk about that. And he's also donated blood well over 70 times. I don't know why I wanted to say that. I just felt as though I had to. So without further ado, would you bring on my favorite Goomba in the whole wide world, Ray Abruzzo?
Could you take the needle out now? I'm sorry. They're taking blood right now. As a matter of fact, this will be 71. Yeah, I'm done. Thanks. Okay. Yeah. I heard you say that I donated blood. That I'll tell you why that first happened. When I was on The Practice, which you didn't mention, you mentioned so many shows, you didn't mention The Practice.
I'm sorry.
I did 50 episodes of The Practice, but right after 9/11, the Red Cross did a blood drive on the set of The Practice, and they had a room set up, and I donated then, which was literally the week after 9/11. And then I've been getting asked to ever since, and now all of a sudden I've done I don't know how many gallons, but they actually tell you how many gallons of blood you've donated. So yeah, I've done. It's an easy thing to do. Not everybody could do it, for various reasons, height, weight.
Yeah.
There's so many reasons people can't do it. I'm fortunate that I can do it. It's easy to do, and I do it, and I get cookies.
How often can you do it? Twice a year?
No, I do it. It depends. I do something called Power Red. It's because of my blood type and my weight, and I have a certain higher iron content. They like my blood. So Power Red, it goes into this machine, and it takes out twice as many red blood cells, and then they use that for pediatric cancer patients and things like that.
Cool.
So the time between those, I think, is a little longer than if you're just donating. And if you're doing platelets, you could do it more often, But I've been a Power Red guy just because it sounds tougher.
Yeah, you know what I mean? It's got to be.
I do the Power Red. So it's an easy thing to do. And if anybody could do it, do it. If you can't, know that I'm doing it for you. All right.
All right. Well, God bless you, man. You've always.
Yeah.
All right.
Because I'm a miserable son of a bitch the rest of the time. So like for an hour and a half every couple of months, I'm a nice guy. And then I feel free to just be an asshole.
But it also brings your blood pressure down too. Because my dad had high blood pressure as he got older after he retired from Eastern Airlines, and he would go in once a year or twice a year. And it would help bring his blood pressure down because it takes a while for your for your blood to get back to where it was.
I never heard that. I never heard that, but sure, I'll take it.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. All right. I got something on you from, well, two things,
Oh,
but one thing is you got a thing against daylight savings time being changed. I agree with you.
well, I've never really liked it because I've been a creature. I lived on the beach for a long time, and I was always so affected by sunlight. I'd wake up as soon as the sun comes up, and as soon as it gets dark, my body shuts down. But this year, I hate it especially more because it gave us an extra hour of this anxiety and insanity before the election. And
Yeah.
it's an extra hour we have to wait to find out what the hell's going on.
Yeah.
But I've never been a fan of it. I like daylight savings. I don't like when it ends, like
Yeah.
now.
Yeah. And I think, isn't it 6 months of it?
I don't know, but it's not. Why not just why leave it the way it is? Come on.
You know, there was
It gets dark at 4:30. I'm ready to go to sleep at 4:30.
Yes, little Marco Rubio here from Florida has put
That was
up
the only good thing. Yeah.
Yeah. He keeps putting it up there year after year after year to have it normal all the time for all 50 states. And doctors come up with, well, it's not good beneficial for you, and it's not this, it's not that. Screw doctors, By the way, whoa, Ray, something's gone wrong.
Really? What happened?
Oh, no, something was a little scratchy there. Anyway, no, we're back now. We're back.
Oh,
but,
okay.
But I just want to remind everybody, we're recording this show the day before the presidential election, which I don't think we're going to have results until maybe Thursday anyway. I think, and if it doesn't go a certain way, we'll be hearing about it for the next 70 days with lawsuits left and right. Also, too, I want to talk about a gentleman that influenced you, because you and I both love jazz music. I got a chance to meet him when they were recording We Are the World, because my roommate was one of the engineers at A&M at the old Charlie Chaplin studios over on La Brea. Everybody keeps asking me, why are those buildings green? And I keep telling them because it's a historical building and you can't change the paint from the way Charlie Chaplin had it, which was a green. And
I didn't know that.
Yeah. And you can't change it. But I got to meet him then, and he called me kid at first. And then as the evening wore on and we got into about 6 o'clock in the morning, he started calling me Gary. Went to breakfast with him and Kenny Rogers and a couple of the other people. And he got mad at Michael because Michael brought his Python with him and he kept scaring Cyndi Lauper and everybody else that night with it. But Q influenced me so many ways. And look at all the people. Ella Fitzgerald he worked.
Oh, it's unbelievable.
Frank Sinatra, Count Basie. It's him, Ramsey Lewis, Maynard Ferguson. I grew up with Jaco Pastorius in Fort Lauderdale. Miles Davis, John Coltrane, all those guys influenced my love of jazz. It just is, I think people, Ray, either get jazz or they don't.
Yeah, well, but there was something about the way Quincy Jones did it. My first introduction, I mean, I guess I kind of knew that he had done stuff with Sinatra, maybe not, but because I think that the album that got me was called Walking in Space. That was 1969. So, I was 15 years old, and people were listening to a lot of different things in 1969. 15-year-olds were listening to a lot of different kind of music. And somehow I came across that Walking in Space album, and there was just the whole sound of it. It just got to me, and that was kind of my introduction. I liked Take Five and those kind of songs before, but there was something about the way Quincy introduced it with that, because that was such a kind of a crossover sound that he created. And he had the best musicians on it. It was like Grady Tate and Ray Brown, everybody, all the greatest players. Toots Thielman played harmonica on that album, and it's the sound. And that there's a song "Killer Joe" by Benny Golson wrote it. Because it's funny. Years ago, I guess when I was doing The Sopranos in New York, I went into a Photoshop store to get something photographed, and there's a guy behind me, and somehow his name came up. He said he was a musician. His name was Benny Golson. I said, "Oh, you wrote Killer Joe?" And he was like, he stopped and he would say, "Everybody thinks Quincy Jones wrote that song." Because it was his song and Quincy covered it. And he was so impressed that I knew that he had written that song. And it was such a little moment, just online waiting for some photographs from a store. But it's such a, a split-second moment, but it's so deep in my memory. But yeah, Quincy.
Yeah.
And plus,
Quincy,
you talked about We Are the World. I watched that documentary recently. That is one of the most informative, entertaining and moving, and you learn so much. And there's so much I didn't know about that they did all in one night. That they had to do it after the music awards. So everybody was in town, and people that didn't show up, and Huey Lewis having to just step in with one of those great moments that he didn't know he was going to have to do because Prince didn't show up. And then, I worked with Cyndi Lauper, and she was also from Queens, and the whole thing with her bracelets making the noise and they couldn't figure out what was wrong. And then there's just so many insights, and the fact that they just had to do it all. And so many of them were the biggest stars on the planet. And yet they all felt humbled by the other people in the room. And
you would see people. You would see entertainers looking around going, "Oh, wait," I turned to Kenny Rogers, who I knew anyway ahead of time, and I said, "Don't you guys all know each other?" He said, "No, Gary, we don't."
I know you almost think they would, but and they all had such a mutual admiration for each other.
Yeah.
It was so beautiful. And then there's, I don't want to give anything away, the people who haven't seen it, but the Bob Dylan moment of when he's trying to find out is I don't want to give it away at all. People should watch that documentary. What's it called? The Greatest Night in Pop or something like? I think that's the name of the documentary. That's the
title of it. But I got to sit there and watch the whole thing. I got home. I was working security at the Beverly Center, working at night in security, auditioning during the day, and I got a note because we didn't have cell phones and stuff back then. But I got a note. It was from my roommate, Gary. Take your shower. Come over to the studio. So-and-so has your name at the gate, come in, blah, blah, blah. So I go in, I get in. Oh yeah, I get down here. I walk down the hallway and Herb Alpert is there. And I said, Herb, where am I supposed to go? He said, down at the end, the final studio. I said, are you sure? He said, Gary, just go down there and be quiet. And he said, I mean, be quiet because Quincy is there. And then I went, oh, okay.
Yeah.
So I walk in and I go, holy crap, look at this.
Yeah.
Have I died and gone to heaven? I mean, and Kenny's sitting back there and he goes, hey kid. And I went, oh, and Quincy goes, who are you? I said, I'm the kid. He said, well, sit down, kid. And I was nice. And then as the evening went on, and then about 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning, Quincy said, all right, I'm buying everybody breakfast who wants to go. And he said, you want to go with us, Gary? I said, sure. Because, the Denny's is basically right there. I mean, the Denny's is right there.
That's funny.
You can walk to it, and I only lived up the street. I walked down to, to the studios. And, that's the one thing about Hollywood that I miss, though, Ray, is you go to the Beverly Center where I work security, whether you were there working or walking around, and you don't know who you're going to run into back in the day.
Yeah. It's different now, but there was that period. There was a period of time, when I was a young actor here, you'd audition. You'd have a lot of auditions when you were younger. Now I don't have any, but back then you'd have like one at 11 o'clock in the morning. Then you'd have one at 2:30, and it's like, what would you do? You'd go to the Beverly Center and just walk around, get an iced tea, kill time, study your lines, and you just hang out. You always, it was.
And then when I joined the Groundlings. Thanks to Robin Williams and Bud Friedman, God rest both their souls.
Mm-hmm.
Then they would come around and in my class was Saget, Costner, Barbie Benton, and I got a story about that. Nick Turturro, and
I just saw Nick last week, and we were talking. We had never met.
Really?
And we saw each other. It's like, hey, Nick, hey. And then we talk, and it's like, I did an NYPD Blue. We maybe walked past each other, but it was so odd that we know so many of the same people, and how we've never really. But it was lovely. He was with his wife.
Don't talk to Nick this week. He's depressed. I can tell you that right now. The Yankees lost the World Series.
Let me tell you something. I was with him on a night. I guess it was during the playoffs, but we were watching the game. As a matter of fact, we were watching the end of the game. I was standing next to him. We were watching it on his phone when they won one of the playoff games, and he was wearing a Yankees. We were in Hollywood, And I just
He
kept,
lives, eats, and breathes the New York
yeah,
Yankees. I mean,
yeah,
the same as I love the Philadelphia Phillies. You know, I
yeah.
mean,
Well,
it's just that way.
yeah.
Um,
Well, none of us are happy right now. Then,
no,
but
well, I
I
am.
did.
Hey, my college is doing very well. They're number
Okay.
5 ranked in the University of Miami's ranked number
All
5.
right. All right.
Yeah, I mean,
Is that
I
that's
got
what brought you down to Florida to begin with? Was going to school there, or did you grow up
when
there?
I grew up in South Florida. My dad was based down there with Eastern Airlines, and
All right.
when I got out of the Air Force in '77, I went back to Miami back to Hollywood to visit my mom and dad, Hollywood, Florida. And I went down to the University of Miami. I had to go to a junior college, Miami-Dade, because I couldn't get in
All
the
right.
first semester. They were full up. But I went into the winter term, and I spent the best 3 years of my life. I went to GW when I was in Washington, D.C.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, I tried to get into Juilliard, but they said, you got to have talent, son. I said, I can sell
Yeah,
tickets.
I could have saved you that time.
Bada bing, bada boom. All right.
Yeah.
All right. Let's get it out of the way because it's the elephant in the room. It's the day before the election. I think she's going to win. I don't think it's going to be Iowa. She's way up now, and which
That's
is ticking
crazy.
him off to no end. Ticking him off to no end. I think he's ticked off enough women that they're going to vote for her. But what kills me is men with the egos. Oh, I can't have a woman in the White House. No,
Oh,
we can't have that. No, we can't have that. We got to
well,
have a
I do
fascist.
love that. I do love that she doesn't bring that up at all. I mean, she doesn't play that card at
No.
all. But I mean, it just amazing. I mean, he's ticked off every group. You're saying he's ticked off women. It's like he has a checklist. Who could I tick off next? He says any Jew that doesn't vote for me should have their head examined.
And what he said about Puerto Ricans, oh my God.
But he says it, and everybody else, if you're not on his, this is the thing. Look, this isn't Obama versus Romney or Bush v. Gore or Reagan and Carter. This is another deal entirely, because any one of those other people, yes, their policies don't line up with what you're saying, but at least there was a sense of being a democracy and a sense of and every candidate would say, once I will work with the other side. He's saying the other side is the enemy within. I mean, and it has nothing to do with it has nothing to do with policy. But if we wanted to get into policy, go ahead, throw it at me, and I'll give you
everybody who's ever worked for this cockroach denounces him. And to show you how bad it is, a man who I despised, even though when I was in the White House myself, Dick Cheney's voting for her.
Because at a certain point, you have to choose, country over party. And when you have all those generals who never, ever come out and endorse a candidate, you have a vice president who was with them every day and was the last person he'd see every day, says, I can't support this man. When you have a chief of staff who's closer to a president than the chief of staff, says the things they say about him, and all the way down the line, and what's like 300 Republicans from the Reagan era on are saying they can't support him. I mean, you've got to wake up, and they're all not rhinos. You can't call Dick Cheney a rhino. And now he thinks that whole bullshit firing squad thing with Liz Cheney, and he's trying to say it's because, well, she's a warmonger and she would never go to war. They try to explain it that way. Well, is he going to say that Lindsey Graham, who was lockstep with the Cheneys through every war decision? Is he going to say to Lindsey, you should have 9 guns trained at your face? So,
I have my opinions of Lindsey Graham, and
I do too. All of them. I mean,
I think he's a little light in the loafers, if you know what I mean.
Well, then come out and say it. I mean, maybe he likes the way Donald Trump works a microphone.
I saw that for the first time before I came on the show today.
Oh my God, I've seen it. I watched it and I thought, no, that didn't really happen. This has to be some kind of AI thing. Somebody manipulated the video. And then I watched it and I've seen it 100 times. Yeah. And I just kept thinking, in what other context could somebody do this? A 78-year-old, what if the principal of a school at the assembly mime doing that, they'd be out of the school the next day, gone.
Any decent
Any job.
running for president wouldn't be
But that's what
this far.
but any job that a person would be dismissed for doing what he did. And I go back to thinking, remember Howard Dean? He got knocked out of the race. Why? Because he yelled too close to the microphone. This guy deep throats a microphone and he's fine. I mean, and then I just keep thinking, what do the foreign leaders think about this? What is it?
They think,
I mean, the rest of the world sees it, but the rest of the world sees it. I know, and they must think they can't believe that it's close race.
They are worried. They're worried.
They are worried. I know, but the only people that aren't worried are Putin and Kim Jong-un, who, when they saw that, they thought he was flirting with them. The
rest of the world is worried because they're saying, if America falls, so will we. And as far as him ending the Ukrainian war, he'll just tell Putin, we're not sending him any more supplies. You go do what you want, and that's the end of that.
He literally said it. He said, if a country's not up to date on their payments to NATO, I will tell Putin to do whatever the hell he wants.
Yeah.
And these are the countries that backed us after 9/11 with, those all the only time that article's been used is after 9/11 since World War II. And he's ready to abandon. All right.
Let's hope.
Let's talk about something else.
Yeah, let's hope by Thursday. I think by Thursday we'll know. And
we're still going to have January 6th is going to come around again, and
in this case, it's January 5th, I believe.
Is it?
And I still think the Speaker of the House is going to pull something with Trump. I think they've got something cooked up already.
Said that. They actually said that we have a plan.
You had mentioned just a few minutes ago about AI, and how much has that influenced Hollywood and acting and show business in general? And what do you think about as we move forward and the technology of AI becomes more and more prevalent and improved? What's it going to, now it's not going to take away from somebody doing theater, but television and films, it could really, I know we have special effects, but still.
Yeah, no, it's very scary. During that last strike, what they wanted to do, what the producers wanted to do, and the union really fought against it. If you're an extra, there are people that are background actors, that's their livelihood. They go and they work, and it's a thankless job, and they sit around all day, and then they're in these crowd scenes, and then, they're not treated that well to begin with, when there's big crowds. And they were trying to make them sign a deal where they work once, they scan their image, and then they could use it forever. On anything. They could put them in World War II garb. They could put her in Civil War gear. They could put them in Roman time. The same person. And it's like, because they've scanned their image and not pay them anything for it. So that's very, very frightening. It's frightening in politics. It's frightening with there's some beautiful things about it. There's some amazing cost-cutting things.
I admire Fran for really going to the wall on this.
Yeah, she did.
Drescher, she really, I would love to get her on this program, but I don't know who represents her, whether she's.
Well, it'll be tough. I don't know if you know this, but I went on a double date with Fran when she was 15.
What?
Yeah.
You dated Fran?
No, I didn't date Fran. It was a double date. I was dating a girl who was her best friend. I was a little older, and I just gotten my license, and I was dating this girl who went to a different high school, and she said, "Oh, come see me in this play." So I went to the play, and afterwards she said, "Can you take my friends Fran and Peter out for ice cream?" So we drove to Jan's Ice Cream Parlor on Queens Boulevard, and we got what they used to call the kitchen sink back then. It was a thing in New York. And it was just a big giant sundae, and everybody would eat out of this. It was pretty disgusting, but we got that. It was Peter, Fran, myself, and the girl I was dating, Karen, at the time. So that was it. And I heard her voice in my head, and then years later, I think I was on Dynasty, and Karen called me. She said, Fran wants to move out to LA and be an actor. Can she call you? And I'm like, look, I'm just getting started myself. I don't think I can help her at all. So nothing comes of it. A few years later, Karen calls me again. She says, you should call Fran. She's got her own series now. And I said, what? She goes, The Nanny. I said, what? I had never heard her last name. So she tells me, yeah, it's The Nanny. I said, I just couldn't believe it. So now fast forward a few years after that, and I'm sitting on the beach in Malibu with my dog by myself. Nobody's on the beach. And all of a sudden I see Fran walking towards me carrying a little dog. And I said, excuse me. And she stops a little shocked. I said, I saw you and you're a good man, Charlie Brown. You're going to do very well. And she just was, here we are on the beach in Malibu. And I'm saying, I saw her in a high school play in the 70s in Queens. And it turns out she and Peter had gotten married, who we double dated with. And she had moved just a few doors down from me in Malibu because they were getting divorced. And then we became friends. And now that was probably, well, that was well over 20 years ago. And we've been close friends ever since.
I would love to get her, but it's not going to happen.
Yeah, she's got her, she's got that cancer schmancer.
I'd love to get her on and talk about that.
That's huge. That's huge. And then she's also president of SAG, and she also has a career. She's shooting a great film right now. In New York. I think it's going to be great for a very serious role with some great actors.
Well, if you ever get a chance to talk to her,
all right. I do speak to her, but I can't. I certainly can't. You're lucky you got me. Come on, Gary. What do you want from me?
I want you. Hey, Abruzzo, you know what I mean? Absolutely, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I'll get you. I'll get you guys.
You were talking about phone call you get from a friend. Hey, Fran's coming out to Hollywood. Yes, I'm just getting started myself. I don't think I'd be of much help to anybody. Who's running? I mean, is it still like that today? I mean, I know when I went there, I didn't know anybody. I mean, yes, no, it's a lie. I did. I knew Dean Martin and I knew his family only because of my own.
Oh, really? Any names?
Yeah.
Dean Martin.
Yeah. And I knew, but Dean couldn't do anything for me because I really didn't have any credits. No. And I have a friend of mine who used to be on General Hospital. Then I have another friend who was on The Young and the Restless. And he said, yes, back in the day, because I did a couple of 5 and under stuff on The Young and the Restless. Okay. Back when they first got, when I first got there. And yeah, it was a radio show back then, wasn't it? No,
I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Yeah,
that was an AIDS joke.
Yeah.
Okay, I got to tell you a quick story. When I get residual checks, I'm just going to go back for a second because when you get residual checks, it used to mean something. Now they don't. They're like 8 cents, 9 cents. So I don't even go. I wouldn't even go to the bank till I had a stack of about that thick. The last time I went with a stack it was about 30 checks. And it didn't even amount to $100. But I give them to this kid behind the counter. He's going, and he say, wow, you have a lot of residual checks. Are you an actor? I said, yeah. He goes, you've been in the business long? I said, yeah. He goes, wow. So so you were there when Hollywood started? He literally said that. The kid behind the counter said, so you were there when Hollywood started? I said, no, actually, I came in right after the talkies. But I instantly went home. This is a true story. I left the bank that day, went online, and applied for direct deposit for my residuals. I was never going to walk into a bank again. I haven't been in a bank since that day.
I get a residual check every once in a while if the West Wing is on because I did something for them, and it's 00.59, 59 cents. Yeah, 59 cents.
I'd kill for one with 2 digits. Yeah. That's good money. Mine are 8 cents. I swear to God. I don't know how many. I don't know. I've done hundreds and hundreds.
Don't you get anything from The Sopranos?
It's pennies, cable, nothing. No, nothing. It's pennies. No, because all those deals with cable were made when when they first made a deal with HBO, SAG. They were like, I just turned into Christopher Walken somehow, but I don't even know where that came from.
Don't know.
Whoa! But HBO was only in like 30,000 homes, so they made a deal where the residuals wouldn't be so much. And now, of course, everything's changed with streaming. But the residual flow is never like network television, No. And that's where you make the money on residuals on network stuff. But even now with networks, stuff they used to be they'd always rerun something during the summer. Right. So you'd always get that nice that was the big residual check, the first rerun after the prime time. But now they go right to one of their streaming services that the network owns. So it's just pennies. This is probably boring the shit out of everybody, isn't it? Are we allowed to say shit?
Yeah, you can say it.
Okay.
Well, Loretta Swit and I talked about that, and she said, I get them, but it depends on what year it is, depending upon how much it is. If it's the first year, it's one thing. If it's otherwise. and she said, but I don't get for the first couple of years anymore. That's run out.
That's because they don't. Yeah, that's because they don't rerun them right away that summer on primetime like they used to.
Yeah, and it's just crazy. But getting back to what I was getting to was, by the way, Ray Abruzzo is joining us here on Main Street. Gary Allen with you. This program you'll be able to see on YouTube as well as on dbtv.tv real soon. We're excited about being part of what they're doing up in Philadelphia. How difficult is it now? Because I saw a recent interview with Meryl Streep, and she said, if I had to start out today, I don't know that I would be the success I am. She said there's limited roles. Their producers only take a chance once in a great while with somebody. And getting back to what I was saying about the soap operas, these kids that are getting jobs on, because Eric Braden is a friend of mine. He said, Gary, these kids are coming in here now, 18, 19 years old with like 3 pages of productions they've done already in theater, where when you were starting out, just coming here to LA, you had basically 2 lines, your name and your address. Is it still, is it gotten worse than ever?
Yeah, it's complete. It seems like there should be more opportunities because there's all these extra shows and streaming shows, and it's like I don't know. I don't think I could make a living if I was starting out now. There's no more working class actors. I bet I was a working class actor for 40 years. I never made it big, but I'd be on big shows for a short period of time. It was like, okay, I'm making a living, but never big money. Everybody thinks I live in behind the gates somewhere. It's not like that. I'm a working class actor, and I know hundreds of guys that I started with that are just working class actors, blue collar actors. That's what I call us. We get occasional nice gigs, and you live off that for a while, but then you go a year without working. But now you can't even make enough money on any gig that you get that could sustain you, because of the residuals that we were talking about. Plus, then they don't pay you as much as when you started. If I guest star on a show now, they will pay me less than I made on Night Court in 1990 when I was. Yeah, they'll pay less. They won't. I didn't do it, but there was an audition the other day for some show, and it was only 2 days work, and it said very established actors only for this part, right? And then it said pays scale. I'm like, wait, you want very established actors, but you'll pay this very established actor the same amount that you'd pay somebody that's literally just off the street without 1 credit. There'd be no difference in what you'd pay this very established actor or some schlub like Gary. I didn't mean Gary. I'll come up with another name. But you see what I did there?
Yes, I saw you. I saw you.
I brought it home. So
who am I on the air with here? Who's on the air here?
Is this thing on?
Man behind
I do some teaching too, and young actors always ask me, advice. It's like I can't even give them advice anymore because it's just changed so much. The business has changed, and people do make their own content. You could kind of hope that you do your own thing, and somehow it gets recognized. But just to make a living, I'm not talking about being a star. I'm talking about literally just paying your rent, paying your car and your car insurance, and eating. That kind of actor is very hard to be these days.
Ray,
just that level of actor.
Without giving too much away, you're a guest star on a program. What are they paying now? What is it? Scale? Is it?
Scale. Very, very rarely.
When you did Chicago PD.
I don't remember. Well, Dick Wolf is different in a certain sense, because I've done quite a few of the Dick Wolf shows. First of all, anytime I've worked for Dick Wolf, I think I've done 3 in Law and Orders in Chicago as a guest star. They were just off. So right off the bat, it's a different atmosphere. I didn't have to audition and all that. So you're treated. That's the first time you get offered something without auditioning. It's tremendous. But and then it changes, and then you're back to audition. Like I told you, they wanted me to audition for this thing that said very established actors only, and they wanted me to do a self-tape for some
crazy
scale thing. And I'm like, this isn't going to help my career. It's not going to pay any bills. But Yeah, but I love to act. You know that, Gary. I'll do a
Yes,
play
yes.
anywhere. I'll go do a
And
play anywhere if it's a good role.
you
I mean,
just won
it's
an
either got
award. You
it's
just
got
won
to
an
be a good,
award.
yeah, it's got to be a good role, a good location, or good money. You know what I mean? One of
Yeah.
those three, and sometimes they're all three.
Remember when we were young? It had to be a hot babe in there somewhere too.
Well, yeah, those days are, yeah,
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 at our age, no, yeah, it could be
yeah,
fatal. Um,
yeah.
you brought up something about auditioning, and you worked with someone who I loved very much as a person. Never got to meet him, and that was Mr. Auerbach when you were doing NYPD or not Hill Street Blues. That was my show. Um, Law and Order. You worked
Yeah.
with
Jerry Orbach.
when you work with Jerry Auerbach.
Oh,
What's it when
yeah,
you get on the set
yeah.
and you're coming in for a week, 10 days?
Well,
What's it
God,
like?
it's different. I literally made my living for 40 years being a guest star. I do recurring roles, and that helps, and a couple of series regulars along the way. But mostly my bread and butter has been being a guest star, which is a very underrated, and it's a difficult job because you are going in there cold. You're going in there where actors might have been playing this role for 5, 10 years already. And the way you're treated is different on every set. And I've always found that the real veterans, the pros that did a lot of theater, the people that had to pay their dues before they make it, people like Jerry Orbach, or I
Yeah.
worked with James Earl Jones and Richard Crenna and Dick Van Dyke, and those kind
Yes.
of people are so welcoming and so warm. I remember shooting with Jerry Orbach. We were shooting a scene outside of. I owned a restaurant, it was like Rayo's kind of restaurant. I was the owner of the restaurant, and we were shooting in Brooklyn. It was 17 degrees. It was so cold, and we were outside. And he was such a trooper, and he was already, kind of up there in age. And I mean, when you see the episode, you could see our faces are literally just cracking
Yeah.
from the cold. And he didn't pull any kind of start. He was just right there, just
Yeah.
another actor doing his job. And it's usually the ones that came up through the theater. It's like, okay, we're
Yeah.
all in
Yeah.
this together.
Yeah.
And you talked
Yeah.
about NYPD Blue. Jimmy Smits was like that. I had no scenes with Dennis Franz, for instance. But I
Really?
remember I didn't have one scene with him, but I remember walking on the set. He saw me. He came over. Oh, we were rehearsing a scene. He came into the room where Jimmy Smits and I were rehearsing. He said, "Oh, hi, Ray. Welcome to the show. Thanks for doing the show." I was a nobody. I'd done some stuff, but it's just like it's called a guest star.
Yeah.
And if you have the lead actors, the 1 and 2 on the call sheet, that treat you like a guest in their home, like we want to
Mhm.
make this the best thing we could be. I'm going to help you do whatever you need to do, whatever I need to do to make this the best scene we could possibly do, no matter what your
Dennis
part is. And those
Dennis Yeah,
they're
Dennis was one of the nicest guys in Chicago you will ever meet.
oh,
Another
he's
guy
such a
from Chicago
Chicago
that did
guy because with his partner, he always had his partners there. Here,
yeah,
yeah,
and then there was Dennis Farina, who was also a
yeah,
real
another.
guy. Farina was a real cop in real
Oh,
life.
I know. Believe me, I know that. Yeah,
Oh, Dennis,
yeah.
besides being a sharp dresser in real life, Farina
Yes,
was like
yes.
for
Yeah,
real. I mean,
he was like that old school guys. Yeah. Yeah.
he called me
Frank Vincent. They all those kind of guys of that era, they had that.
yeah,
Yeah.
that look. He would call me by my legal last name. I mean, Gary Allen is my first and middle name, but he'd call me by my legal last name because when Dennis was still doing Bleacher Bums in Chicago is when I lived in Chicago with then my
Oh,
wife, and he was just kind of getting going, and then he did that show
true crime story.
Crime Stories, and
Was
he
it
was
Crime
so
Story?
yeah, yeah, because
Yeah.
they had that song. I wonder
Oh, yeah,
the
yeah.
one song, and he was so cool. And then I would run into him in L.A. and I would run into Dennis Franz at not at Grandpa's, but at Dupar's in the
Hmm.
Valley. And one day I'm in Dupar's, my wife and I are sitting there, and she goes, "All right, who do you know here?" And I said, "Well, I know him. I know him. I know him." And Dennis points. Dennis goes, "Don't you dare point at me, Gary. Don't you dare point at me." And she goes, "Who's that?" I said, "That's Dennis
Who's
Franz."
that?
Oh, my wife she worked for J. Walter Thompson. She had her head in the stand about so many
Mm,
other things. The only thing that she mattered about was, um, But when you go on the set of a Dick Wolf production, I would imagine you, because all of those people, which brings up my other point I wanted to bring up with you, when you're working with someone in film or television, can you tell within a matter of a few minutes, oh, this is a theater rat? Yeah, this is a person that has had to pay the dues on the boards.
I generally get the feeling of what it's going to be like. Usually a guest star has to get into the makeup chair before the stars, if it's early in the morning, you're the first up. So I get the feeling of what the day is going to be like within 5 minutes of sitting in the makeup chair. You just pick up a vibe from the people doing hair and makeup. There's a vibe in the room. And if people are happy, okay, that number one on the call sheet, whoever it's going to be, is a good guy, a good girl, somebody that's, and then you walk in there, if you see people are kind of, it's like, okay, I think we got an asshole on number one or number two, and I've experienced it both ways. Generally, people are very warm. I've been on sets where the number one barely acknowledges you. I don't want to mention any names, but there's quite a few. Then there are the ones that are great. I remember I did one NCIS. Is that right? Yeah, with Mark Harmon.
Yes.
I remember I got to the set. It was still dark. It must have been 5:30 in the morning. We were shooting, and all the trucks are outside. And I went to get my breakfast burrito, which you do. They always have a truck there, and I'm noticing the Teamsters and everybody, the grips, and they're smiling. It's 5:30 in the morning. It was cold. Where usually there's kind of everybody was smiling, and as the day progressed, it was the happiest set I ever worked on. And then I realized it was because Mark Harmon was so welcoming. He was so warm. He made you feel at home. I played a mobster on it, believe it or not, but I had a guy that was my bodyguard. And I don't think maybe he had one line or no lines, but he was in all the scene. Any scene I was in, this guy was there. And I remember at one point, I'm sitting in my chair and Mark's in his chair and we're talking. He spots the guy and he says, "Hey, come over here." And he brings the guy over. He says, "Sit here." He says, "Ray and I were just talking about whatever we were talking about." And he brought the guy into the conversation. And I said, "Mark, you have such a beautiful attitude in this whole set. Everybody on the set is smiling." He said, "Ray, we're in the top 3 every week. Look around you. There's 150 people here. Every single person here is putting food on their table, putting their kids through college. And look what we're doing." He said, "How could you not be grateful and happy about being here?" And I've always felt that way, but a lot of people don't. And he did. And it stuck with me so much that, I've never seen him again after that, but it's like, it was so beautiful, I think, for him to say, and such a, he had been in the business a long time, and he could have easily been an asshole and a prima donna, and he chose not to
Mark Harmon. No, not Mark Harmon. Because
but it's people are generally who they are, and then hopefully they don't get changed.
Not with his father. No. I mean, his father was an All-American at Michigan.
Yeah,
he was a quarterback at UCLA. He played on the softball team with me, Will Schreiner, and others at the Improv, because we were all members of the Star of David. We were all Jew boys. I know how you Italians feel about us Jews, but nevertheless,
no, you're all right.
There it is. But
some of my best friends are Jewish. Okay, go ahead.
Hey, you have been on so many different shows, but I want to talk about some of the actors you have worked with, because I had so many questions, but the hell with them. Talk about Betty White. You did Hot in Cleveland.
Yeah.
Is she as raunchy off the air as she was sometimes?
She is watch some of the outtakes of Hot in Cleveland. Just Google Hot in Cleveland outtakes. She was hysterical. I'll tell you, I had a couple of run-ins with her. One was on, I think it was like New Year's Day or New Year's Eve, and I went into those honey baked ham places where you go and you pick up a ham. I think I was bringing it up to my sister's house for a holiday. I don't remember what the holiday was. And I see this woman in front of me, and she pays for her stuff, and she's got these 2 bags, an older woman. So I see she's starting to walk out. So I go and I open the door for her. And as she turns, I realize it's Betty White. I go, "Oh my God, Miss White, I'm such a big fan." She put her bags down. She goes, "Oh, that is so sweet of you to say." And then she goes and she gets in her car. I remember it was New Year's Eve. And she gets in her car by herself and drives away. And that was the year right before the Super Bowl commercial where she did that Snickers commercial.
Oh, yeah.
and she exploded. So I hadn't seen her in anything in years. Then that Snicker commercial hits, and she explodes and becomes a huge star again. And Wendy Malick is one of my closest friends,
Yes, I know.
who was on
Yep.
Hot in Cleveland. So most of my experience with Betty White was socially if she came up to Wendy's house and I was there, and she was just one of the great memories. I think I did a couple of episodes of Hot in Cleveland. I don't remember, but there was one of the episodes was her 92nd birthday, and they did a flash mob for her. So she loved Hawaii and hula dance. So her assistant used to do a hula for her every morning when she came into work. So she gets driven to the thing, and her secretary comes out into the middle of the street, starts doing the hula, and it breaks into a flash mob, and everybody comes out, hundreds of people, because we had choreographed this whole dance. It's on YouTube. Look up Betty White Hot in Cleveland flash mob dance. You won't see me. I'm in there, but you can't. You'd have to really zoom in.
Yeah,
but it was such. And I mean, it got like millions of hits right off the bat. I mean, could there be a more loved? Is there anybody? You won't find a person on the planet that doesn't say, "Oh, I love Betty White." And can you imagine that feeling?
You could probably talk to B. Arthur, and she'd tell you something otherwise. There was no love lost between those two.
Is that right?
Oh, yeah, they did not like each other at all.
Wow.
For some reason, I don't know the stories, but they were there on the set of The Sopranos. Who was the practical joker?
Oh, Gandolfini was pretty good at it. He was pretty good at it. Well, there's a scene. Everybody was really loose on that set. That's another one of those sets. Everybody just wanted to do their best work. So there's a real seriousness to it. Everybody would come in with their A game or prepared, especially if you're doing a scene with Jimmy. But there's a scene towards the end of the series where I'm trying to make peace between New York and New Jersey. And I tell Tony that he has to go hat in hand on bended knee and apologize to Frank Vincent, to Frank Vincent's character, Uncle Phil, Phil Leotardo. So we go to the door to visit Phil. I finally talked Tony into going there, and we're at the door, and Butchie's there blocking the door. He won't let us in, and it's my close-up. And while I'm talking, Jimmy had his hand on my ass. So he's standing over my shoulder right here, but what you can't see is that his hand was cupping my ass while I'm talking in kind of a very serious scene. So if you see the scene when I'm talking, I think I say, "Hey, Butchie, come on. I just talked to him on the phone. Let us in." Yeah. Gandolfini had his hand on my ass, just so you know that.
Yeah, it was how was Steve Sharippa to deal with?
Steve and I have become friendly afterwards. But I never had a scene with him. But I remember one thing. In the early 90s, I was writing a kid show for Nickelodeon called Wienerville. We shot it down there in Florida, Universal Studios. And I walked on the set of Sopranos, and Sharippa sees me and he yells, "Wienerville!" I'm like, "What?" He's recognized his kids loved Wienerville, this kid show on Nickelodeon, and he recognized my name from the credits. So even to this day, if you watch the Talking Sopranos podcast with him and Michael, at one point, Steve just goes off on Wienerville, and Michael Imperioli's like, "What the hell are these guys talking about?" He had no idea because Michael's such a serious guy, and Sharippa's talking about the puppets and all that stuff. So
Sharippa's a comedian by nature. I mean, he ran a comedy club at the Trop in Las Vegas. He doesn't have that anymore at all. Okay,
he doesn't need it.
No, he's been a hardworking guy. I remember him on his first episode of Law and Order, where he played a hitman. Unlike you, when you were on LA Law, and they kept bringing up your family, and everybody thought you were a member of the mob then, but it wasn't. It was a circus family.
Right. That was one of the great. I love that storyline because it really did debunk the stereotype that everybody was going for.
Yeah. And I remember that story too well. By the way, on that show, there was I forget his name, the little short guy who was the attorney. He was married to Jill Eichenberg.
Tucker, Michael Tucker.
I get a bad vibe from this guy. I've seen him on other things, and I get a bad vibe from this guy.
Oh no, I haven't seen him much. I had one great experience with him in Amsterdam, believe it or not.
Okay.
When I was on, we flew to, when I was on Dynasty, they were flying TV couples for Good Morning America was doing a week live from Amsterdam,
Uh-huh.
and they were flying TV couples. So I was on Dynasty, and I was a couple with Fallon, who's one of the major characters.
Yeah.
And they were on LA Law, so they were flying these couples. So we met in Amsterdam to do a week of Good Morning America. We just did one interview, and then we were free, and we just had a wonderful time. Plus, he and I both, and Jill, his beautiful wife, Jill, they're married in real life, who's a lovely person. We also both support this theater in New Jersey, and they've done a lot of plays there. And I did a play there with Dan Lauria that ended up moving to New York. But it's New Jersey Rep is a small little theater. But Dan and I did a play there, and after that, they'd start to bring in. They'd get bitter. Wendy did one with Gary Cole after that, and Jill Eikenberry and Michael Tucker have done several there. John Glover.
Gary Cole went to what you call it in Chicago. That's where he cut his teeth.
Yeah, what a career he has. Boy, this guy doesn't.
And Dan Lauria. Oh my God, what a great actor Dan Lauria is.
He's all right.
He's all right. He did a good thing on Vince Lombardi that was just unbelievable.
I did that role too.
Did you?
I took over for him when the play. Yeah, I've known Dan. I've done a lot of theater with Dan, and Dan and I go. I think I know Dan 40-something years.
I wanted to get a hold of him at the time because my brother Michael played for the Baltimore Colts. My half brother. And that's how I got on Air Force One and all that other crap. Anyway, I wanted to introduce myself to Dan because I got to meet Vince Lombardi at one of these chicken dinners. And Lombardi looked at me and he pointed at me, and Michael was standing next to me, my brother, who was 6'4", for God's sakes. And he said, "Are you going to grow up to be like your brother, a linebacker?" I said, "No, I got better sense than that." And he just started to laugh. And my brother Michael just turned around and he just went up. He said, "Vince, I'm sorry." He said, "No, the kid probably does have better sense than all of us." He said, but he was so cool. And I said to him one time when I saw him again, this was about, I had just gotten in the Air Force, and I was in Washington, D.C. I just had my first tour in Vietnam, and I just came back. I was visiting my brother in Baltimore, and I went up to Washington, D.C., because that was my next duty post. And I got to meet Vince before he died. And I said to him, it was always either the Green Bay Packers or the Baltimore Colts or the New York Giants. Mm-hmm. I said, "Is there such a thing as a dynasty anymore?" He said, "Not really." He said, the league is becoming too many teams now. He said, "Someday, Gary," he said, "there's going to be 17 games and there's going to be 30, 40 teams, and the whole thing's going to be watered down to a point where."
Interesting.
But what a nice man. And he was very young when he died, but boy, he
58. I think he was 58 when he died.
Yeah.
Something
and
like
he
58,
was
60. Yeah.
But he was the man.
He was a good guy. Dan's a Vietnam vet, Dan Lauria. Did you know?
I didn't know that. No, I didn't know that.
And he does a lot with vets organizations. So that's.
I think he's great. I just think
I could probably get Dan on your show at some point.
Yeah. Oh, are you kidding me? If you could get Dan Lauria on, I'd love to have Mindy on, but she won't come on because who's Gary Allen? Although you can tell your friends we get about 150,000 viewers on DBTV per hour per day when this show airs. That's it. Just in the United States. Just in the United States.
Why did I do this? Why? It's only 150,000. Why did I do this? Get my agent on the phone. Never again. 150,000.
The Funkin' Wagnalls agent. Anyway, which reminds me.
I got to tell you one more story. So I ended up. I went to New York when Dan was doing Lombardi because Dan thought I could do the role if he had to go on tour. And I went there and I saw it. And I thought there's no way I could play this role. And then the show closed. And then the first production they did after Broadway was down in Florida. And they asked me to play Lombardi. And I thought, well, I'll do it here. So I did it. And the play opens with you doing a monologue to the audience, but the audience is your other. I'll get that. If that's my agent, tell him I'm busy. You edit this?
It's my agent. Get off the air, Gary.
Your agent has your phone number.
Yeah.
So the play opens and you're yelling at the audience because they're your team. The audience is playing your team. And I look out into the first row, and who's sitting there? Lombardi's daughter.
Ooh.
Yeah. So I'm yelling. I look and I say, because I just watched the documentary and I recognized her. So that was a very interesting thing to play Lombardi for his daughter. And that was
He
anyway.
He put the fear of God in the players.
Well, here's the thing. He played every player differently by what they needed. You know what I mean? Yeah. He yelled and he berated the ones that needed berating. He praised the ones. He handled ones with kid gloves that needed kid gloves. That was his skill, I think. And it works.
And you know who else was like that? Don Shula.
Oh, is that right? Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah, because I was in Carlisle, Pennsylvania when the Colts would when they were in Baltimore, and they would go up there for their training in Carlisle. I knew nothing about Carlisle, Pennsylvania until I realized, well, that's where Jim Thorpe went to school.
Oh.
At the Indian school there. But Shula was very much like that. He treated different players differently. If you were injured and you couldn't play, he did not talk to you until you were ready to come back in the lineup.
Wow.
He was very strict. He was very so they played back in those days, injured or not. I remember Tom Maddie said about my brother in an NFL film, if you ever watch, Mike Curtis, Baltimore Colts, my brother was a blue collar guy. That's what they all were back then. They didn't make any money. They made no money. They were all blue collar guys, but Vince Lombardi was the man, and he was something else. And something else that I learned about him later on, I don't know if it was in the script that you did or not, but he was not a big fan of Howard Cosell. He did not like Howard Cosell in any way.
Oh, there might have been a reference to it. Yeah.
He thought Cosell was a blowhard, and he didn't like blowhards. He said that, when you score a touchdown, none of this Joe Hollywood stuff. You give the referee the football because you've been there before and you're going to be there again. Unlike these guys who celebrate everything. Oh, everything.
Yeah, the showboating gets to me too. I remember being a kid and watching. I'm not a big football fan, but I remember being a kid and really early on, maybe 5 or 6 years old, there was a game on. I remember somebody tackled the quarterback, hit him so hard, and then then he reached down and he helped the guy up and gave him a pat on the ass. Boy, that doesn't happen now. They dance over everybody. Where it used to be, they help the guy up from the opposing team that they just knocked down. That's neither here nor there. But I just remember that I just remember learning a lesson as a kid. And Lombardi was also, he was so politically astute as well, and racially astute. He wouldn't let his players at that time, if they were out of town, he wouldn't let his white players go to a bar if the black players weren't allowed to be in that same bar or hotel.
Yep.
So
all of Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin in Las Vegas.
Exactly. Same.
All of that. We've got a few minutes left in this particular program, Ray, and I want to thank you so much for joining us. But in the few minutes we have left, because I got to keep this under a minute, under an hour. If you look back on your life and you take a look at who you are now and where you are, and you're all alone in your home or driving your car, who is Ray Abruzzo? Who's the guy I'm looking at here? Who is he inside?
Wow. That's heavy. You know what? I'd say I'm a guy that really values friendships. I'm friends. I just went back to New York a couple of weeks ago. I'm in LA. And I still see a group of friends that I hung out with in high school. And no matter how much time goes past, we get together and it's the same. And like I said, I have friends that I've made here. I'd say I hope I'm a good friend, and I hope that spills off into my work, because I'm still very good friends with people that I've worked with, because it's that same attitude I was talking about before. When you're on a set, you just want everybody to do the best that you can. You treat everybody right, and you try to support people and let them do the best that they can. And
you've always been good to me as a friend.
That ends now. Just
that Stephen Boschko connection that we both have.
Yeah, that was a good one.
Ray, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day.
Thank you, Gary.
And stay right there. Don't go anywhere. I'll talk to you after we're done here.
Okay.
And I just want to thank all of you out there for taking a few minutes out of your day. This program is going to be on YouTube in a couple of days, and it'll also be on dbtv.tv very, very soon. Until we meet again, would you please take care of yourselves? God bless you, and have a great day.